Hey everyone, Tactics here with a brand new mic, but the same tips and tricks here. We're in this Mythic Plus title route walkthrough. We're going to be covering probably the hardest dungeon of Season 3 Murozond's Rise. I'll be going through our plus 26 Tyrannical Rise run here, discussing how we routed through the dungeon, some tips for coordinated groups for the trash pulls and bosses, as well as just some easy to miss details and tech that will hopefully help you when you're pushing into higher keys and going for that 0.1% title. If you want to see another dungeon, I do have some videos similar to this already out on my channel or linked in the description below, and the rest are going to be coming out over the next week or so, so be sure you are subscribed with notifications on so you know when those get posted. You can also catch me live pushing keys on my Prop Paladin over on my Twitch channel at Tactics, so make sure you do stop by and say hi. Otherwise, let's get started here. We're right off the bat, you are going to be skipping straight to the maiden mini boss here because she is one of the more dangerous ones, both on fortified and tyrannical. And so if you don't have a rogue in your group like we do, we are going to use shroud. Things like invis potting right at the start over to that mob is very common, or misery and shadow meld stuff. Also something you can do if you have a demon hunter in your group. But right off the top here, we're going to be going straight through, and there is going to be 4 casters in this group, so there's going to be a lot of free casting basically going into the tank. You want to make sure you are getting bolt stops, corroding volley stops on every single one of these Maguses, kicks or stops. Usually kicks are going to be going into the bolt to group up. So you see here, I'm going to be kicking diamond. We have a range assigned to kick these ones behind us just to try and get them grouped up initially. And I see there is diamond in the back here, so I'm going to target it and divine toll off that mob when I'm over here. We can see this is a pretty big pull here. 2 mini bosses. We have a big prio damage comp, so we're going to be focusing down the maiden here, and we're going to be very, very careful of sanguine. One thing to keep in mind is the tank in this pull is the rending cleaves here. It's a significant amount of damage on Tyran week, and because it's sanguine, I'm mostly hyper fixated on dealing with that, so I don't do a great job of reducing my bleed stacks in this area, but that is something you can do. You can do backstep during these casts. Technically, I think they're stoppable as well, so something you can do to mitigate those stacks, but I'm going to rotate through my cooldowns, rotate through things like Dwarf Racial, like Evoker Bleed Cleanse, like Bubble, to remove my stacks when they get out of hand, but there is some kind of preemptive stuff I could be doing here to just reduce the number of stacks I'm getting in the first place. In terms of Spurlock, you want to be relatively close together range, so that you can, one, avoid this hit because the actual dash is going to one-shot you basically on higher keys, but also so it's not too far. Our Evoker is basically assigned to always get this kick. An Evoker can, their kick timer is short enough that they can get every single one of these, while everyone else is just focusing on getting kicks on the Epoch bolts and then stopping the corroding volleys. Ancient Radiance is something you want to be very careful from. The maiden on higher fortified keys, usually some sort of cooldown rotation, especially as you get into the higher like 27s, 28 fortifieds. Having rotations of Zephyr, Mass Barrier, Scales in our comp, Barrier even in our comp, that kind of thing to help actually live those hits. But on a 26 Tyrant, it wasn't the scariest thing in the world. You can see here knocking off the maiden. That's the big thing here with Sanguine, is the maiden does not move. So you can see here my movement was Sanguine. I'm actually trying to get the mobs off of the maiden because she stops so often to cast here. And there we managed to kill her without getting any sanguine healing on her specifically, I believe. Then we're going to move on. As soon as she dies, basically, we're now going to chain into the next mini boss with a few more mobs. And basically all our prio damage is going to swap, which was on the maiden. It's now going to Valo. We basically ignore Spurlock this entire time. He just gets passively cleaved down because, again, our Evoker is babysitting the whole time. That was a little bit far as we were moving that jump, but you can see here now our ranged have moved in a little bit, so the next jump is not too far. There is 2 casters here, but basically I'm just moving out of these bubbles. We get kicks on the casters to move them out of it. And there's not too much left of this pull. The hard part is that beginning part with the maiden. These guys move a little bit better. This is heavy Vanguard. There's not too many of the casters in this second part of the pull here. And you're going to see basically we're going to kite back down towards the ramp here because I'm going to pull a few more mobs when these start dying here. And you can see, like, we kill these 2 keepers at around the same time. I'm just a little worried about Sanguine here, which is why I'm not already gone. But yeah, there's either 4 or 5 Vanguards here, depending on why some of them pat down at the beginning of the fight, or the dungeon rather, and some of them don't. But on a fortified key, these would probably go straight into boss. Even on like a non-sanguine key, maybe on tyrannical, we pull them and they're almost dead by the time this RP is finished. So we just kill them before the RP, before we pulling the boss because it is sanguine. But on a fortified key, you'd probably go right into boss. It'd probably be healthier too. Now, let's talk about this because you may have noticed we haven't killed about half the platform, so you don't have a lot of space here in terms of usage because there's a bunch of mobs somewhere on the platform. As you can see, if I back up like this, these mobs here, there's another similar pack there. There's a lot of them, so you need to be careful. So we pull like to an edge of our safe space, and basically we've split this kind of platform almost into what we have left into like 4 quadrants, and we're going to use those as best as we can. So something to note, the combo he uses here, you can see this is all says the same timing. You don't know which one is coming next initially here. You know spark is first. What we do for this first spark, just to make sure we don't get messed up by bad timings, is we throw a barrier down and we actually just mass dispel this first one. Boom. Well, not too scary. Maybe there gets to a key level on like a 29, 30 if people end up pushing that high in this dungeon where we can't do that. But you can see on a 28 or 26 rather, sorry, that wasn't really scary. It's probably perfectly fine on 27 or 28 to do that as well. We get a dividing strike here, so that's good because that would be in the bad overlap where someone with a dot gets it also has to soak that. In that scenario, what you can do is commit an immunity to soak this, so you only have the tank with a big defensive and an immune player in here, and then the players with the dot don't need to actually be in the soak. But because we cleared it early, we're fine. Priest does dip a little low here, so that does show you we do need to be, having some sort of defensive running specifically for the priest and the evoker when doing those soaks. So between scales running, between barrier, mass barriers, Zephyr, and then rescue shield, that's kind of what the rotation is. And then of course the priest has his own personal as well. We're baiting here on the edge of the room for the Infinite Annihilation. I now know I'm going to get a tank hit next, so I make sure I'm not getting knocked off the platform. Boom, into the wall. And we have one more bait here, it looks like. So again, look, everyone's baiting very, very nicely. And now he's at 0 energy after this because that's his 25 energy cast. So I move to the middle here. And then let's talk about soak. So basically how we're soaking is we want to make sure our DPS have max uptime. So as soon as I pull the boss in the middle, this is the side, the part where the boss is, where our rogue is going to be soaking orbs. Our mage pretty much always soaks orbs around here, like between this area, because there's mobs over there when we're actually playing the boss over there. So he just always goes over there. And then the rest of the platform is kind of split up between me and the healer playing goalie, and then the evoker running around behind us, getting his stacks as well. So you see me and the healer kind of run over here. We're playing goalie. We get anything that's about to hit in. The rogue soaking over there. Our mage is getting all the stacks over there. And then the last one for the evoker. And then I'm going to come back and go right beside where our puddles were. And we're going to do the same thing. Again, sparks are always first here. Don't know what's going to be first coming out. Yeah, I think we probably didn't personal correctly there. Yeah, I think we missed like some personals there. So that's why priest goes down. In general, in our comp, usually it's the priest and the evoker that are most scared. So a lot of our defensive focus actually goes out on them. I think I probably should have sacked him. Did you get the thing here? Oh, no, he didn't actually get the thing here. What did he die to, actually? Not sure. Let's look. Did he step in a puddle, maybe? This spell goes out. Oh, he got ticked by the other circle. Okay, so that's avoidable. Got it. Understood. So don't be in another person's circle. We have the soak here, which we just did with... that's why we popped all the defensives there, because we were down a person for the soak. So we popped Zephyr and Scales to actually live this. We probably should have just audibled for the immune soak, because that would have actually cleared the rogue's dot as well. And me and him could have soaked it on our own to have been less scary, but it's fine. Anyways, we're going here. Again, baiting. Now we have correct timers after the first ability is cast, so you can know what's going up next. Soak and then, a bait. And then we're going back to the middle here again. And similarly, we've now shifted slightly. The rogue is now over here. We have one person going to be going over there. Looks like the evoker. The mage is going to his spawn. And then again, me and the priest are over here just getting any stragglers that come in and no one else is getting. See, like, I'm not going to get to 5 stacks usually. 3 to 4 maybe on a good day is what I'm going to get to. But the goal is, again, the main DPSers are getting to 5. Evoker's probably getting to 4 or 5. And then me and the priest are kind of getting whatever's left there. So again, baiting. And this fight is just rinse and repeat. I think by the next phase is when the original puddles start disappearing. So you can actually start to go back on a higher tyrannical key, like 28, 29. And you still have the space. You're not going to run out of the space. It's not like perma goop. So it's still going to be avoidable. Here's a little tip here. Titanic blow, if it's the last one, I actually usually get knocked back towards the middle. Obviously, if you're like a demon hunter, super mobile, it's not a big deal. But as a paladin, It's a nice little thing for boss movement just to get him towards the center ASAP. And it's just rinse and repeat from here. Not too much to talk about there. And then we're going up here. You can see Lust is coming off cooldown. We did Lust that first pull. And what's likely going to happen is we're going to kill this pack and we're going to Lust the 2 dragons afterwards. Now, in terms of mitigating damage, it is the best thing in these kind of pulls to kill the Marauder. But because this dungeon is one of the few that's very time constrained, we actually dump all our prio damage into the Watchkeeper and kill them even and just say heal and, you know, manage our defensive cooldowns well, so we can actually kill these at around the same time instead of killing this one super early and then hitting only one target at a time. So that's why we do that. Then we have the gauntlet here. You know, I managed to do it in one try here, which is sick. You know, hugging the sides is definitely the play. Waiting and pausing if there's someone in front of you triggering things can also be helpful as well. And the other thing is you can actually immune, like once you get to this platform, you can actually immune and run right through the middle if you wanted. You know, some people may want to save it. I think our rogue did cloak and he just gets through insta, but neat little tip at the end there. Immunes make you unable to actually be hit by those balls, and just make sure someone steps forward to trigger the RP here initially so the dragons do fly down. I think the rogue had already done it when I got here. So we open up and then we are going, and see Lust is coming up in 5 seconds here. So again, we split our priority damage. One of them hits one dragon, one of them hits the other dragon. We Lust this as well. Just to get it on CD, because again, tight on time in this dungeon, and you do want to be getting all 4 bloodlusts in this key, so you need to press them relatively close to on cooldown. This was technically a little early, but there's nothing else really great to Lust in this area, so you might as well Lust here and just get it on cooldown ASAP, and hopefully maybe get it to at a better time on the last boss if you're able to Lust early. But as you see in this video, we Lusted very, very early, and we still didn't get a great Lust timing on the last boss. Not super ideal anyway, so it is what it is. Killing these guys, watching Sanguine. I think I actually play this area pretty badly. So basically in this area, you kind of want to always be hitting one of the time lost mages here, or one of the big dog guys that put Bloom out. So I get this guy, but you're going to notice I'm going to end up not having quite enough count by the end of it when we're done RP, and I have to pull an extra pack, and it's a little bit of a time loss. What happens here is I just missed some of the mobs on left and right here that I should have brought in here. You're also going to notice here, this is a pretty small first pull because they're all like half health, right? And I'm actually not going to clear a lot of sand in this first pull. Something some people have done as well is they've done knocks to like push these mobs in when they're like almost dead. I don't think that's a big deal. You do need to be careful though as a tank not to touch your toe in the sand. It is quite painful, so something to keep in mind here. You can also have ranged players like pull mobs for you as well if that's an issue. So you see here, I think I probably should have pulled one of these Rift Mages in fairly early here and called for someone to pull them in fairly early, just because it's not super ideal in terms of the efficiency of cleaving. So, you know, more time Rift Mages in, the better efficiency wise this gets, but it's not the end of the world here. You notice for blooms here, I believe I dwarfed this bloom off. Some other interesting things about bloom. So it actually, if you watch my Black Rock Hold video, functions very similarly to the spider dot in that video, where they will actually only apply if they deal damage to your health. So obviously, if you are able to absorb that attack fully, it will not actually apply a magic dot to you. So that's things like the Farok Trinket. If I use that just before the bloom goes out, then boom, I actually don't get a dot and no one else gets a dot. Same with like Monk Cocoon and things like that. If you have a big enough absorb on you, you will not put out the dot, which is very, very good. So you can rotate through that, through immunities like Bubble or obviously AMS is both an absorb and immunity on this effect, so you can rotate through that kind of thing, and that will actually help mitigate group damage a fair bit and tank damage as well. So dog comes behind here, so I end up just pulling him in. Get very low here. I think I probably hit the sand as well. But the issue with this is we haven't hit a time mage or a rift mage rather in a very long time, and so that makes this a little bit inefficient because you can usually pull an anomaly with a rift mage, but we just pulled 2 anomalies kind of together, which is not ideal. So we probably should call to have one of the range, probably tap I think that rift mage. He would have been the closest one to get initially, but again, if I had just had more sand clearing at the beginning by adding some more of these small guys into the initial rift mage, I would have been able to get this rift mage by myself pretty easily. So that's kind of the thing here. We go right down the middle basically to open up access to both these rift mages, and then we're going to go to Morchi first. So we want to make sure that area is more clear but you still need to touch this gate over here to actually trigger the RP, right? Both gates need to be touched. You need to kill the 2 Rift Mages channeling into the gate here. I get a little scared here because the 2 Rift Mages are now padded like right next to each other. End up just tapping him with Judgment, and 2 Rift Mages at a time is not the end of the world for a Prot Paladin group. We basically have everyone kicking one, and I'm kicking the other one. Could be problematic for other tank comps though, so just something to keep in mind. I believe we just end up chaining these Rift Mages together now, because again we're a little bit behind on like the Rift Mage damage because we didn't really pull a second one too quickly. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You want to kind of chain these Rift Mages back to back to back to back, especially if you're not able to interrupt 2 at a time. And the goal here in terms of counts is 74.3%. It's in the MDT route, which is going to be linked in the description as well, the actual count number. But that's why you're going to notice here, basically, once these 2 Rift Mages are dead, rather, and we go near the gates to actually trigger the RP, I'm going to be down count a little bit here. Actually, I think I trigger my cheat there too, yeah. Not great. So the portal's already open, but we're not at our count yet. So that's the problem. That's also, again, goes back to that first pull. It was just a little bit too small. I needed to add a little bit more to it. So something to keep in mind there. But 74.3 is where we want to be. So we are there. And we are now going over to Morchi. And we are actually going to pull this first dragon here. Something a lot of people aren't doing. I think this dragon is just free count if you have a purge in your group. That's the biggest thing, though. Make sure you have a purge in your group, and you have to kill something anyways, or you don't have to, but it's efficient to kill this anyways because of the RP on Morchi. So you're going to see here, we're going to hit this mob. Our dragon is just going to leave and trigger the RP. You need to make sure that you're kicking the volleys. And I think we use a stop on the, there's the ball cast here, the bubble cast. And then we have just a melee kick on the time bender itself. And our purge is just ready to go as soon as that's the stop, I believe, barrage. Millennium Maid goes out, purge it off, and then you take no AoE damage. I think that actually went out on the mob that was about to die too. Basically, as long as you purge it, it's going to do pulsing damage from the mob that it applies it to. And as long as you purge it quickly, it's not going to do anything, basically. So that's the big thing. If you don't purge it, it does a lot of damage around the target that it applies to, so you need to make sure you run away from them. But if you purge it ASAP, it basically does nothing, which is very, very nice. And you can see like this pack was just kind of free, like 6% count, right? And then we just go straight into the boss because the RP is now done, which is very nice. Now, Morchi. This is a boss where CC chaining will take a lot off of your group in terms of having to deal with mechanics. If you aren't able to get a CC chain done, usually there's players are going to be running around a lot. You're obviously going to be taking a bit more damage, so you can heal through that damage. It's not really why you do it. It's just mostly so that you don't need to be running around and lining up your dude with a trap or just in general maybe hitting a melee from your fixate guy and dying, right? So that's why the CC chains are good. Now, we have a horrible comp to CC chain. If you don't have a druid, if you don't have a demon hunter, it becomes significantly more difficult to do a CC chain because both those classes kind of hard carry with mass entanglement and then things like misery or even like double misery, right? So we are going to get a little creative here with our CC chain. More problems off the top. You see, we do spread initially. We kind of go to a different area to figure out which Morchi is which. Use the ping thing there. Get over there. And then we are going to get our first familiar faces. And this is the important one because you need to be together. So basically here, we're going to... I think we actually have some miscommunication on this one too, but it still works out. We wait for the time traps to spawn. Boom, time traps. And then we want to get to a good spot. So we have a couple pings. So we adjust where we're going here. And the goal is you don't want to be on the edge because these are going to be hard CC'd during the next more problems phase when you teleport to the edge. So you don't want to be on the edge, but you do want to be relatively close to the edge to give yourself space. So we're going to spawn all these here, and we're going to go to the direct opposite side of the platform, and we're going to use landslide from the evoker to get the first set CC. And then basically here, we're going to chain. And note that whenever basically familiar faces is recast, it will then break their CCs. So they need to re-CC it. There's such a long time between CCs here, so we need to commit another CC to these guys before the next familiar faces cast, and we still need to make sure that we have a CC for them. So in terms of what CCs our comp has, we have landslide from the evoker, which you just saw. We have AoE blind from the rogue. We have ring of frost from the mage, and we do actually have the priest route as well. That one's a little bit more finicky. I think that one you need to actually be in melee to actually do it, which is a little scary if you get too close to your own. So He would actually, I think, what we should have done is have him CC out of this. Because again, I think we use Ring of Frost, which isn't the end of the world. That's actually a fine CC as well, but it cuts it very close. You see, like the next cast is in 11 seconds and only lasts 8. So if he had just gone up after we found the right Morchi and done his AoE root on them, it actually probably would have been better than this. But obviously that's a bit more moving for the healer, but there's no real damage going out, so it's not the end of the world. But this does end up working out fine. So we Ring of Frost this, and then we let the familiar faces actually trigger here. I think some traps spawn on them, so that take some damage, but it's not the end of the world, like I said. So boom, they're going to get familiar face. They're going to pause, and then he's going to AoE blind when they're all up, and they're just going to be hanging out there AoE blinded. And again, we're just on the side of the room here. Don't really need to move because, you know, we don't need to run from anything. And that's kind of the fight here. The next set is going to be broken at 26 seconds. So again, you see, we do need to pop a CC here before this actually expires. So we're going to run, find the Morchi here, because we split up. And then we're going to, I believe, landslide. Boom. So we've chained landslide again onto the blinded guys. And then I believe we need to now Ring of Frost out of this, because blind isn't quite back yet, but he'll get blind in just a second here. So boom. And then he can blind out of this. And then I believe this is where it all starts to go wrong, because I believe Halo breaks the blind. Yeah, you see that Halo breaks the blind. Again, it's not the end of the world. Someone there CC'd, and you can heal through this damage. So we just use things like stuns. Boom. Try not to stagger our dot too much here. And we're just now playing the fight natty because our CC chain is broken, and we, as a comp, have to play this fight kind of a little bit oddly anyways with our CCs available. So we just kind of play this natty. I think, look at that's how big the melee range on the mobs are, by the way. It's bigger than their circle. Be careful. They melee bigger than their circle, which is what happened to our priest there. So be aware. Otherwise, though, we're just going to kill boss here now. It's near the end anyways, and we've saved a decent amount of time by doing that CC chain. So that's a positive for us. But, you know, in case it does go crazy, you just need to make sure you are letting those mobs hit the traps and trying not to stagger too hard. Use long-term single target stuns if you can. And we're just mind soothing past this guy. Can shroud, can invis as well. Going all the way to boss. And yeah, I think we just shroud this. But you can just wait for a good patrol. Like, you just had to wait till these guys basically to leave, and you could have just walked right through. So you're going to see us do that at the end anyways. And Lust is off cooldown, so we're going to press the button ASAP on the tank here. Now, in terms of dealing with the fire, this is actually very important. Do not be crazy with your movement if you get picked by Volatile Mortar. Backpedal straight backwards. Watch. This is targeting me. I backpedal straight backwards. Look at this fire. Look at this line. It's perfectly even. No one takes a single point of damage. Just make sure you have enough space to go that far. It's very, very easy. Anyone can do that. Ranged, melee, whatever. I think technically you can also strafe left or right as long as you don't change the direction you are facing. You keep facing the same direction as you strafe left or right. That works as well. But I think backpedaling is just the most consistent, because I think strafing get a little weird. In terms of bombers, don't be super afraid of them. If you get one stack at the dot, it's not the end of the world. I basically just run in here and single target stun. I think same with our rogue. We just kidney one of them, and, you know, one that's not on them rather, and you just kill them. If they blow up, they blow up. It's not the end of the world. You can see their range going straight back. Super easy, right? Nothing, not really difficult to deal with there. If you start moving all over the place, starts, you know, going back and forth, backpedaling, turning your camera, it actually gets really weird. So don't do that. Kicks here, super straightforward. Consecrate can actually be quite scary on higher fortified keys. I believe it's fortified scaling. So be aware of that. You may need to actually start pre-moving on the Consecrate cast. Boom. So you just need to look how much damage, right? Because so basically by pre-moving, you can avoid the first tick. By moving after it goes on you, you could technically, if you're fast enough, avoid the second tick. But you can see there, our priest did take 2 ticks. On a higher fortified key, you see the Consecrate cast, you start strafing, basically, is how it works, just so you don't actually get hit by any of the ticks. Shuddering Slam, always just in front of the mobs on the tank. That's how it works. Always directly in front of the mobs. So depending on how the mobs are facing, that's where the swirly is going to spawn. Sometimes they get a little staggered, so just keep that in mind. But in general, that's how that works. And then we have this boss fight here. So we're going to tank him dead center here, basically a little bit into the room just to make grouping on the axe throwers or the archers a little bit easier. Mortal Strikes. It's a tank buster that's going to make your healing reduced, right? Including absorb. So like the Farak Trinket will get reduced by the Mortal Strikes. So you want to pre-pop it, which I think is what I do here. Yeah. So you can see pre-pop it. It's very, very easy to handle. The first shockwave always targets me as the tank. In my experience, it always targets me. first and then someone else second. So keep that in mind. Tanks need to also be on the outside here, because we're basically baiting all the shockwaves and the blade storms around this area to reduce the amount of stacks the boss gains, because that's what's going to be murdering the raid, or the party rather. And you're going to see here, if he ever does get a bunch of stacks, we're just going to rip like a Zephyr, or we're going to rip a mass barrier, just to make sure that we don't get murdered by the 2 or 3 auto attacks in a row that start dealing extra damage. So you see here blade storm kiting along the edge. We're going to move over. We're going to kill this archer. Our rogue is assigned to kidney the first arrow from the archer. I think this is actually the worst we do this fight too. I think we get a couple things going out, a couple bleeds going out here. Quite scary. So you want to make sure you kill this archer first if you can. Have CCs and stops available to actually prevent the serrated arrows from going out here. And if they do go out, using dwarf racials or using things like a bleed cleanse from Evoker or just big personals is what you're going to want to do here. So I believe he pain suppresses himself as the priest there. And I'm going to start to reset now. But ideally, again, 0 go off. You can use stuns to quick cast. So that's why our rogue always goes over in kidneys ASAP. But outside of that, you should be ready with other CCs to stop that cast if the mob is still alive. You notice here too, health is not always full. Again, insta kidney. That is because these mobs are all technically active in the field, and they'll just take passive damage from AoE. So as long as you don't kill them, because that can lead to problems too. If you kill too many footmen or too many conjurers, you can actually get a wave with 2 archers. And actually, I don't know if that happens to us on this hole. It might have, but it's very, very scary if you have 2 archers up, especially if they're spread out. It's not ideal at all. On top of that, we have our mage just assigned to instantly kicking. Oh, here it is, 2 archers. This is what happens if you kill too many of these inactive mobs here before they become active and respawn. So it'll prioritize getting 1 of each, but if there isn't 1 of each available, see, there's no footman available, we get 2 archers. Not good. Very, very bad. So this gets a little scary here. Our mage, again, is always going to kick the conjurer in, so he groups up. But, he kidneyed 1. I hodged the other one. But there's still going to be things here, and we just need to be better at using our AoE stops. You can see we get 2 near deaths, I think, on this because we just didn't use another stop after our initial stuns. So something to be aware of. Make sure you are getting stops on those archers if they're still alive after a single target stun on them. And make sure you are focusing them as well. See the blade storm cutting along the edge here. And again, we're always trying to recenter back at the spot. I always have something for the Mortal Strikes. That's the big thing. You need to have something for every single Mortal Strikes cast, and you need to be aware that it is 2 hits. So, like, I'm always saving my Farok Trinket to just solo a Mortal Strikes hit. I'm doing, like, things like Sentinel. I still have things like Goak and Bubble Taunt as well for later in the fight, right? So those can each individually solo a set of Mortal Strike. So make sure that you are using your cooldowns effectively and not overstacking them on that ability. And here, Archer's almost dead. That's perfect. That's exactly what you want. You don't want them to die when they're not active, but you want them to be sub 50% HP because it makes it significantly easier. You can see here though, he had 2 extra stacks of the AoE pulsing, so we popped scales there just to help with that. And from here, it's just a rinse and repeat, right? We're cutting the blades from along the edges here, and then we're regrouping as much as we can on the center. And you'll see when I can, I'll move over towards the archer, or we use Nox to push the archers in like that, just to make it a little bit easier in terms of grouping and cleaving that archer down. But other than that, the fight's just kind of rinse and repeat from there. Again, we just walk through normally on the way back. Lots of running here. Rogue ran ahead with stealth just to trigger our P, so the mobs are already down here when we get here. And again, similar to that pull after tier, all our prio damage actually going into the Slayer here. It is less group damage if you kill the Marauders first, but it's not as efficient cleave. So we kill the Slayer first and just have a kick on each of these Marauders. You see they die actually around the same time. Slayer actually dies first almost, yeah. And then we go into the last boss. And this is a tough boss for sure. This one is going to eat a lot of groups, definitely. So I'm going to start here on the far side of the room. We're just going to insta-pull the boss. And here, by pulling the boss here, basically the boss will spawn Rift Mages based on where he is in the room. So the first spawn, if you're on this part of the room, is always going to be like around this area. So that's why I pull the boss over here initially. So there's basically no movement between the first ad spawn and the boss, which is nice. We always have our range basically assigned to this. Usually it's our dragon, but he'll call sometimes for the mage to stay in or whatever. So, just make sure you have your range kind of split evenly to actually deal with that. And what you're scared of here is a tank, because this first phase is exceptionally heavy tank damage, and the second phase is very heavy party damage. It's kind of how it's balanced out. Is you are very scared whenever a keeper up. On its own, this cone dot is actually not very scary. And that's why like P2 is actually very chill as a tank. You're not afraid of this on its own at all. What you're afraid of is the infinite blast spam from these keepers. And that's what you want to make sure you're CDing. So I actually hold Sentinel and I IF tier as well when this guy comes down. And that's what's going to hold me through this first one. And this is actually where I think I probably misplayed slightly. So I'm going to cheat later on in this fight. And I think I misplayed my CDs slightly. I think what I should have done here, and this is kind of where it gets scary for a prop paladin, is anytime a temporal breath happens right before you need to move significantly with an ad spawn, because you can't be in your consecrate, obviously, and he's going to start blasting you. You're going to have a dot from this. It's all weird. I probably should have spell warding this one. I just spell warding on myself. But I think it's fine. I end up basically just having the back end of my Sentinel, my Ardent, and then I use Ferox as I move. I think that both work. Spell warding would have helped. The downside is I wouldn't have spell warding for P2, so it's iffy, but on a higher Tyrant key, I think it would have been very, very useful to spell warding that. But I think because I did Sentinel too late enough, it's fine. I think I should have called for this pain suppression later, though, and that would have helped. If I had called for this pain suppression like now, so it would have been full now instead of only 5 seconds left. That actually would have probably also prevented me from cheating, because it would have covered this and I would have still had it for a couple seconds here. Because what I'm trying to do here now is trying to time my bubble to actually cover the next overlap of the breath. So if I'm doing that, actually, I couldn't have spell warding the previous one, so I think that's fine. I just need to have this pain suppression a little bit later here because I can't bubble yet because it's not going to cover the duration of this breath, basically. So I health pot here. I'm going to probably, yeah, I drop consecrate there, which is not ideal either. And this is where I would want to bubble, but you're going to see I'm going to tick cheat right as that happens, which is super unfortunate. I basically just need to figure stuff out for one more second. But now you see, because I did bubble taunt this breath, I actually don't get the dot here. So I'm free to dip out. Just be careful with aggro on these guys. I taunted this one. I believe our mage has to invis this one because I don't have taunt back in time. Yeah, he did more damage to it too than our rogue who was tricksing me here to get aggro on these guys. I probably should have taunted this one in hindsight and then hit the other one. But because I don't have the dot while running across the room, it actually makes it significantly less scary, especially as a prop paladin, to actually deal with these guys at the end. And so we nuke down one of them and then we have another one left. And I think actually what we probably should have been doing here, it's not a big deal if you have a range spec, because you can actually, you see Chronolord here, like he's taking full damage during this phase. So our mage at this point, since one was already dead, me dealing with a single keeper and no boss is actually not super hard either. So our mage, probably what I think we should do is our mage swaps to Chronolord here, and it's just me and the rogue killing the keeper here. And because, you know, again, it takes a little bit more time to kill this keeper, but the mage is getting full effective boss damage during that time as well. So it's not the end of the world. And again, you can see here with just this guy hitting me, it's not super scary, right? I'm not really in any danger. What does mean you will deal with more infinite orbs during this phase, but that's not the end of the world. Now, when we get into phase 2, and this is where you start getting a lot of raid damage. So basically, the scary overlap here is you're always going to have an infinite orb detonate at the same time as the infinite corruption pulsing damage is happening. And so you just need to make sure that you are staggering your defenses enough that you have some coverage. So infinite corruption goes out initially. Also, we are terrible with our infinite corruption swirly baits on this pull. So you're going to see we're going to run out of space at the end here. You need to basically stutter step more and not just full sprint as much as we're doing, because we're spawning, like, basically we could have avoided all these spawns here if we had starter step more and maybe used our space, our quadrant a little bit more, not quadrant, but this area a little bit more. We could have put swirlies like here and this area instead of also covering this area, and that would give us more space in the future. But something to keep in mind, we use range on the edge again to try and cluster those swirlies a little bit more. And I play in the middle, point the breath away, and then for this infinite corruption, you can see here basically one orb went off, infinite corruption is about to cast, and then another orb is going to go out mid infinite corruption. I believe we use mass barrier. Yeah, we use mass barrier here to help with this one. And again, this is what we should be doing. I'm starter stepping a bit more. but we probably needed to use the back because we used that whole back of the room. We basically didn't use it at all there, right? So this is where we're starting to get bad with space now again, and then we're going to run into problems later on in the fight. But from here, the fight is rinse and repeat, but it's all about defensive usage, right? Like people need to have like defensives running for these actual casts of Infinite Corruption, because again, you're taking the Infinite Corruption, taking damage, you're taking a big hit from the orb here. I'm throwing out off heals. I believe we have sack, we have spell warding, things like that for some of the more squishy classes. Usually like the rogue is never in danger, right? But other people can be in danger. So I think we're going to cycle through Zephyr, cycle through Scales, cycle through Barrier and Mass Barrier, as well as just like rescue shields and other externals. But you see here, because of like how bad we did, I mean, all three of these last movements really are not ideal. We are actually going to run out of space because basically you need to do 5 movements before you come back to your original set. Otherwise, it won't quite despawn in time. So you're going to see here, like we're going to move and we're going to be stuck kind of in this corner before stuff has like despawned fully. And this is not ideal, right? So, and again, we didn't use our space great in general. So you want to make sure, again, with your range being on the edge, you are actually using the edge a bit more. And then melee can kind of stutter step a decent bit and fill in the spots and play relatively close as well. So you can see this is coming out and then we're losing stuff. So it gets very close. But again, bad baits. Like I should have stepped this way to put puddles here instead of this way, and then fix the boss positioning after the fact. It's not a big deal. I should have just gone for better baits as opposed to what I did there. But it ends up being okay. Again, we pop Lust, I think, on CD, or close on CD. When does it actually come up? Let's see when it comes up. Yeah, so it comes up shortly into phase 2. So we end up just popping it with cooldowns here in phase 2 when the boss comes down. So we couldn't have even lusted earlier if we wanted to. And this was like a near on cooldown, like lust, basically across the entire dungeons. You can see how important it is to just rip your lust on CD. But overall, that is actually it. From here, just kind of going around in a circle and use your space better than we did. So hopefully this video walkthrough did help you guys out. If it did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like it. As I mentioned, I'll be going through every single season 3 dungeon in a similar manner, plus of course guide videos for season 4 of Dragonflight and beyond into the War Within as well. So keep an eye out on the channel for those. Of course, need to give a massive thank you to all of my fantastic supporters over on Patreon. It really does mean a lot. Otherwise, thanks everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.